Hey everyone, welcome back. We are just about to get into lesson number 8 on the Maggio trumpet technique. This is called lesson number 8, the roll of the tongue. Enjoy. Okay, so in the Advanced Studies preface, there's various aspects of trumpet playing. Obviously, that the takedown from Catherine Macbeth goes into about the teachings of Louis Maggio, and this one kind of focuses is the first time we look at how the tongue, in terms of articulation, is used and what we do with the tongue. One of the aspects of having a nice relaxed embouchure, I suppose, and being able to move freely around the instrument is our articulation and how easily we use our tongue to play the passages that we've got to play, either through the manipulation of syllables, as in with a lot of the Maggio technique, and also the articulation of these phrases, be they classical phrases, more soloistic phrases, or commercial leads, trumpet and pop type phrases as well. So whilst going into all of the lessons, and eventually when I got to lesson 8, I realised that this is for some reason my most uncomfortable, which is part of the reason probably why it's taken so long to get here to actually do this lesson. The very, very, very first part of the lesson, where we do multiple semiquavers descending down to our pedal C, multiple semiquavers, and then ascending up, I just find it really, really difficult. So I'm not going to share with you all the numerous attempts it takes to get this correct. Just take it that I can do it. I do it as well, but it's not my favourite exercise. And there's probably more to be said about my playing and why this is a weakness of, I wouldn't say it's a weakness, but why it's not a strength in my playing, being able to play numerous pedal Cs. So maybe that does transfer into the rest of my playing, etc. Because I believe that every component of the Maggio technique relates directly to what we do throughout the rest of the range of the instrument. So we're going to get into this now. One of the things, referencing back to what I just said about the Advanced Studies preface, there's mention of the K tonguing or the double tonguing and triple tonguing, for example. We're not going to get any triple tonguing in this exercise because those patterns aren't here. But certainly the double tonguing is an option here. Now, after spending a lot of time with these studies and with this study as well, there are other studies that I feel are better for practicing the strength of the K tongue and the double tongue. But as with everything, it doesn't mean to say that you can't do this. Maybe I will demonstrate it later on when I'm in a register in an area that's a little bit more comfortable for me. We'll maybe do some straight K tonguing, and we'll maybe do some straight double tonguing. One of the other things I'm not going to do today is have the metronome going. The last lesson that I did with the metronome was an absolute, it was really, really hard to do all the editing afterwards, etc., and then jump in and jump back out and redo some parts, etc. So what I will do is I'll use my phone to give us a rough idea of a tempo that I'm going to be starting at, and we'll take it from there. Now, as with every lesson, there's a very, very short preface regarding the actual lesson that we're about to get into. So this is lesson 8, roll of the tongue, and number 1, it says proceed this lesson with either warm-up C or D. Done that already. Today I did warm-up C. And that's all I've done today. It's a little bit later on in the day than I usually like to get going. But I've done warm-up C. Retain airstream throughout the exercise. So that's a given. That's pretty much the same as everything else we've done. Even when we are introducing the pedal motif, airstream all the way through the pedal motif, breath in through the nose because we'll need one, and then from where you start the rest of the exercise, or in the first part of this exercise, it's a continual stream of air descending down and then back up. When we've taken the pedal C motif breath, then obviously all the way through to the end. Pretty much what it's stating is that we don't break the exercise anywhere to take a breath, okay? Apart from the pedal C motif. Keeping the tongue relaxed. So this is where we have to make sure that when we are tonguing consecutively, and you might find this in some of your regular playing, if you have like some consecutive notes to play, something like I don't know, yeah, and you might find that for whatever reason you do something like or so it's like we're not really efficiently using the airstream there. We're not really letting the tongue ride the airstream here. So there's probably a few things to add in about keeping the tongue relaxed. Now, if the tongue is relaxed, then it's going to react a lot freer to the airstream in terms of articulations. So also, I believe that carries down into a nice open throat area as well. So the part of the tongue for me that actually creates the articulation in a standard single tongue is just behind the tip of the tongue, and I usually strike in an area just at the bottom back of my top teeth. Now, when we're talking about the K tongue, that's slightly different for everyone else again. And I also believe that depending on how fast you have to use a K tongue, we will look at very, very slightly in this exercise or in this lesson. That actually depends on where your K tongue is going to strike. Okay? A little bit more on that later. Concentrate and accurate time. So this is where we should have the metronome going, okay? But we're going to reference a tempo at the beginning. We might dip in and out of that tempo, but I am not going to have a click going. It was really, really difficult to sync up. Or maybe I need more practice of that anyway. And then the last one, the suggested metronome speed is 58 and increased daily. Now that is quite slow. But when you start this exercise, if you're brand new to this exercise and you're working to play through the pedal register and you're trying to get a nice, cohesive, consistent stream of semiquavers or tongued notes, doesn't matter if the semiquavers or quavers or what, doesn't matter, in the pedal register, that's quite tricky. So taking the time over that is quite tricky. And as you move through your range, so you're going to have a comfort zone in your range, and your comfort zone in terms of regular valve playing should probably be an F sharp by now. You should be able to play a bottom F sharp in all three if you're doing these exercises in the Maggio technique quite comfortably. So let's just talk about the written range from your F sharp, and then your upper comfort zone on regular articulation and consistency of note probably be below where your actual comfort zone for range is. And the reason for that being is that when we articulate a note or a phrase or a passage at the limits of our range, we're affecting quite a few things in there. We're affecting airspeed. If we're not tonguing properly, then we could be affecting embouchure shape. There's all these little things that tie together. It's like a huge big Jenga puzzle. Yeah, we want that tower to stay as strong and as upright as possible, and the more things that we change in there, the more chance we have of it all falling to pieces. So I've talked for a wee bit. I'm bumping my microphone right here. I've talked for a wee bit. I'm going to get stuck into lesson 8. We'll reference the tempo of 58, okay, and then we'll come back in. I think I'm probably most comfortable, not too much faster than that. Okay, so here we go. We're going into lesson 8, the roll of the tongue. Okay, so here we go. So this is 58 beats per minute, as suggested metronome tempo is at the beginning of lesson 8, roll of the tongue. Here we go. Okay, so not so bad. Now then, moving on. Now, you could retain the tempo all the way through, and I don't think there's a problem with that. Varying your tempo as you go along. I think you're better to not run before you can walk. So if you can really maintain a tempo of a really, really slow, making sure that everything is as accurate as possible, then you are going to really cover all the bases. So you might be able to tongue. I've got a very, very fast single tongue myself. So my single tongue on so it's the bottom C. that's really comfortable for me. I can't do a pedal C at that, and I can't quite tongue at that velocity in the extreme upper registers. The notes dance all over the place. I can get a few lucky, you know. But in terms of trying to find a happy medium all the way through where I can tongue cleanly and consistently throughout my range, I'm actually only going to do this around about 64. I think is like the best place I can do, because when we ascend right up to the higher parts of a register towards the end of this exercise, then you have to be thinking about all your embouchure shape and everything, or rather your syllable shape, etc., and the open throat here, and trying to make sure that our tongue is relaxed enough to deal with the less amount of air that's going through. Because remember, when we are in the upper register, we're not blowing hard, we're blowing fast. The tongue doesn't really change, the tongue shape changes, but this lump of muscle in our mouth is essentially doing the same thing, and there's less of it to react because it's got a shape to form as well. So here's my reference for 64 beats per minute. Okay. And yes, I have got a subdivision on it. Ta 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 ta. Okay, so we'll do a few. I'll do a few in the pedal register. I'll include, obviously, the fact we'll probably just do the whole exercise and then edit it later. That'll be a lot straightforward, more straightforward. Here we go. Do that again. So that's us down to our first pedal C motif. Let's check sure everything's recording right. Yep. Pedal C motif, and obviously that's our F sharp line. Now there was a couple of like notes that didn't properly produce there. In an ideal world, every note would be perfect, wouldn't it? So in the name of brevity, I am going to just like gloss over those, but we're all human, you know, and like when it comes down to it, not everything's going to be perfect. I'm not going to chop this whole video off just for the sake of one or two wee missed notes. So we essentially ascend all the way through the scale here, and we have a little turn of affairs when we get to our C scale. Let me just double check I'm not making this up as I go along. When we get to C, we play up to the B, so we continue the B as we do, so starting on our third line B, going down to our B, then coming back up, and then there's a rest period in there, okay, and then we continue on with the C, but we flip the exercise so that we start on the bottom C, and we ascend up to a third space C, and then we come back down, okay. So I'm going to carry on with the exercise. We'll dive in and out. We'll have a little kind of tempo check here, see how I'm holding up there. Not far off. Da 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 da. So this is us on to G now, with the pedal C motif. So suppose one thing that I'm not really concerning myself too much just now about is the type of tonguing that I'm doing. I'm just thinking about a generic middle of the road ta 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 ta. I'm not trying to think about these notes being too full, like a full tenuto or legato sound all the way through. I'm also not thinking about having them super staccato. I think more than anything else, we're just trying to really practice our articulation, and as we're moving through the register, so we're still on the A syllable from the beginning of our very, very basic Maggio exercises, and we're only now about to ascend into the T syllable, the A, as we move up towards C sharp and onwards, etc. Not trying to worry too much about the type of or shape of note that I'm doing. Now, there's no reason why you can't use this exercise for this, but as I said about the K tongue, I think there are a lot other better exercises out there from Clark and Collins and Arbin and Schlossberg, and just all the numerous other studies out there that are really, really designed to have a real proper workout at the tongue and the articulations. Okay, so now we're on to A flat. And that's it. So for the first section, this is where we take a little 5-minute break. I'll see you in 5 minutes. Gonna have a wee coffee and enjoy the rest of the lesson from here on. Alright, welcome back. So now we are going to carry on from our bottom C up to our top C. And after this, obviously, we're going to start transitioning through all of the syllables that the Maggio suggests. So we might as well start here as well with a little bit of K-tonguing. Now, this was a mystery to me for a long time. When I say a mystery, I'm talking about actually specific K-tonguing. And I never put two and two together. I've never really done a lot of research into like the Calais thing, etc., and the TCE, and there's a whole bunch of other references out there. And I always just thought about double tonguing as like taka taka or digga digga, and I didn't realise that that's what we're talking about, etc. And there's a whole methodology built around this and how you can use it to affect range, and it's amazing. It's absolutely fantastic. But for the simple aspect of what we're talking about here, in terms of our option to introduce double tonguing or work in our K tongue as well for certain phrases or passages, etc., where single tonguing isn't appropriate or stylistically correct, then spending a little bit of time on our K tongue is quite important. Now, I'm going to say that I don't do enough practice on it anymore. I used to be a brass bander back when I was learning, and I used to be able to double tongue and triple tongue a lot better than I can now. I can get by, and like I said, I've got a very, very, very good single tongue, and I can tongue a lot faster and up to double tonguing speeds of some other people. It's not really a superhero power, and it's not great to play at party games or anything, but in terms of being able to get by without double tonguing, that's probably why my double tonguing is particularly weak, because I've been able to get away with single tonguing. Anyway, enough waffling. So this is my standard single tongue, just on a C. And this is the K tongue, or the weaker part, let's call it that, or the other part of a double tongue. So that'd be like a K tongue or a Ka tongue. Now you can hear that that's not quite as clean and as precise. And I'll just do a little bit of acceleration here from single tongue into K tongue, back to single, and then into double tonguing. And that's about it. And like I said, I can almost single tongue at that speed. So that's about as fast as my double tonguing can get anyway. With practice, I know that it can move a little bit cleaner and faster. And the funny thing is, as well, is like when you start to move up through the range, this is my own personal experience of this, is that because we are more conservative with our air, as we should be, and we're generally blowing a little bit softer, the actual double tonguing can be a little bit faster because it's just not being quite so aggressive. And the tongue's in a slightly different part of the mouth, so therefore the K's got to move as well to a different part of the mouth because the tongue's in a different position. So all this stuff comes into it. So what I'll do is reference my time again on the metronome. I'll do the C major 1 on the K tongue, so that's going to be ka 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 ka. Okay. Now when you move through the syllables of this, you still retain the syllable. Okay, so it'll be ka 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 ka, k k k k, ki 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 ki, etc. And that's what we're saying about, in some situations, the K tongue can actually facilitate access to the higher register. Now, that's not what we're going on about here, but it's worth experimenting on your own, in your own time rather, to see if that can be beneficial for you, because what you might learn from doing that is a tongue position that will allow you to access the correct velocity of air to get some, not higher notes, but to get a more consistent feel, maybe a more readily accessible upper register. I'm not going to say it'll help you play higher. It might help you find access to that register. And once you've learned that K position with the back of your tongue or the middle of your tongue, you can transfer that tongue shape into a front tongue position as well, etc, etc, etc. So anyway, let's get this tempo going for the C major. Ka, 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 ka. Ka, 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 ka. Okay, here we go. So that's it. So obviously not as clean as the front of my tongue. And I said previously that my K tongue is, or the other part of the double tongue is not as strong as the front part of my tongue. And that's probably the way. Now, if I had work coming in that demanded a lot of that type of technique, then yeah, I would put a lot more work in it. And it's the same for triple tonguing as well. Depending on which triple tongue system you use, so the ta-ta-ka or da-ga-da, then you're going to have to rely on being able to vary the weight of that as well. So the other thing about using this exercise, you could use this exercise to vary your articulation placement within the exercise. So moving on to the C sharp, do this with regular single tonguing and accenting every quaver of the semi-quaver phrase. So just remembered something. So you could do that. What did I neglect to do for the C and the D flat? I forgot to do my pedal register. Okay. So let's go back and do that. We'll do the K tongue with the pedal register. Move on to the D flat. Might as well do that with the K tongue since I did the practice as well. Yeah, really need a lot of work in that. One of the other things you can tell from my K tongue is that it's not as accurate within each one of the beats. So each one of the semiquaver hits within each one of the beats. It's not as accurate. You know, it's kind of moving forwards and backwards within the time. So that goes back to the beginning of the exercise where we're given the slower tempo, etc. So if I was to do my K-tongue exercise, my actual proper K-tonguing exercising, I would just be working on my basic scales. The real basic, playing your scales, working through your arpeggios, whatever it is, and just getting the K to speak as nicely as the tip of the tongue, but also to have that nice control of where and how hard you're tonguing with the K, how articulating rather, with the K. Anyway, so moving on. We might try some K later on when we start to go up. So this now stays the same until we get up to our top C. So here we go. D now. So that's us already gone up to E there. So we've transitioned from our A to our T, or tie. And now we're into E, so the T position, and we're starting to move up towards our tsh type area, okay? Alright, so that's us up to our top C. We've been all the way through, as usual, going through our ta, te, ti, tsh, etc. Now, as we're going up and down through these registers, we should now be more familiar about just thinking about how our tongue changes within the register as we move. Now, one of the things that I want to try and, I suppose, bring to light here is that when we're moving through the scale, maybe more so than when we're doing any arpeggio work or interval work, the actual movements we make are a lot more refined and smaller than you might have ever thought. So coming into this and you're thinking about your ta, te, ti, ch. So you've got this massive range of movement in terms of how your tongue is moving for all these syllables. The actual amount of effort that we have to do with moving our tongue, it's tiny. You know, I'm still learning the tongue shapes, etc., and what really works. Coming into a high note from a lower position and learning that manipulation or feeling, because thinking about or using the word manipulation means that you have to like maybe change something or make something happen, where we don't really want to do that. You know, it's the same from coming from a higher note down to a lower note, etc. We want this nice musical connection between all of our ranges, whatever, and that's also what these exercises are doing. They are connecting ranges, and that's something to really try and bear in mind when you're doing this as well. But if you're talking to other people about it, you know, it's like having conversations with other trumpet players and tongue shapes. It's like when I was learning this, I was way overcompensating in terms of the shapes of my of the embouchure and the tongue and everything. And really, it's not until you get towards maybe exercise 2 or 3 in the beginning of the Maggio system, and you've done a lot of warm-up A and warm-up B and lesson 1 and lesson 2, etc., that you really start to realise that you don't have to change so much. It's all about fine-tuning. So that's us at the end of this first section, another 5-minute rest. When we come back in, we're starting on our C sharp, okay, and we're only ascending up. So we're doing 2 groups of 4 on the C sharp, and then we're starting with the C sharp, going up the scale, and we're going to finish off, with 2 C sharps, or rather 8 C sharps over 2 beats, and then a hold on the C sharp as well. So, time for another 5-minute break, or tea, coffee, whatever your poison is, and I'll see you back here in 5. Okay, so here we go. I just noticed I've got these tiny wee beasties crawling over my camera again. That's what those little white dots are you might see going across the screen very slowly. Anyway, I think that's one of the benefits of having a studio on the countryside. Anyway, so tempo's going. We're going to start off in C sharp. Now, the next time we change the format of the exercise will be around about a G. Don't know if we'll get there today. We'll just have to wait and see. And then after that, we move up to A flat, obviously. But we'll see how we go. So that's my 64 beats per minute. Beats per minute. Here we go. So suppose I'm holding these top notes for 4 beats because that's what feels comfortable. I think holding the note for as long as you need to without the sound degrading and trying to do it with as good a quality of sound is really, really important. I suppose another way you could look at it as well is if the note isn't clean when you hold it, but by learning to maybe relax your grip, just relax a little bit more into it, keeping the air going, and the note gradually speaks. That could be a fair argument for just waiting to see, because we are still learning our tongue position in this upper register. That's why we're doing this exercise, really. We're learning to articulate in the higher registers, or throughout the whole register of the instrument, really, with the tongue shapes that Maggio suggests that we do. So now we're moving on to F. That was really a little bit chat to give my chops a rest. Anyway. Do you ever feel lucky? So, you can hear there that the notes were a wee bit squirrely in terms of coming out. And that was at, I'm pretty sure that was at my... maybe even a little bit slower. So, without the metronome reference tempo, I know I can play clean, consistent, or consecutive high Gs. So if I just play a scale up, or even come in on them. Maybe I can. So, depending on how fast you have to articulate those notes in whatever register that you're doing, there'll be a limit to how fast you can do it, because you need to learn to match up your tongue shape and your tongue speed, etc. Now, that's quite soft there. I'm pretty sure that if I was to put a lot more air behind it, then I could probably get the note to really, really speak. And probably a little bit clearer and faster. But is that really what we want? Let's just see, actually. So, to me, that actually sounds a little bit less controlled and a little bit less musical. So trying to find a balance between where you can actively play these notes as cleanly as... obviously our tongue's going to be in a different position up there. That's the point of this exercise. Okay, so that takes us up to a 5-minute break. Time for more coffee. See you back here in 5, okay? Okay, so here we are. Getting very, very close to the upper limits of my range, certainly anyway. So this is where the exercise changes ever so slightly again. In that we do our pedal C motif, and we start off as usual with 2 beats of semiquavers, and then we just descend a scale up to the octave. In this case, this will be A flat. And I usually get about as far as the A flat, and that's it. And then I'll show you what I do. Okay. Just for reference. Now let's get a tempo reference again. Da, 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 da. Okay, so not the cleanest, but it's there. I'm going to carry on and then maybe come back, okay? Right, so I'm not going to push any further than that today, because I've got another lesson to shoot after this. Right, in terms of trying to play in tempo, I kind of achieved it with the A flat, but a lot of the notes weren't there in terms of being clean and accurate. And those notes, so let's say up to the E flat and even the F, are notes that are within my regular lead range. So to ensure that I'm practicing as it was in the G scale and the F sharp scale before and the F scale before that and the other part of the exercises. So in terms of like making sure that this part of the scale is really in place with this focused tongue position, etc. This is where practicing without the metronome, or really putting the metronome back to a place where we can focus on aligning all of the concepts in terms of our tongue shape, how much air we're using, how much compression are we using here, how much compression are we using here, to try and get them to all to match up so that we get a nice, clean, not only scale, but obviously the notes in there as well. Now we can slur all through that register, so the air is probably going to be right. So that's all there. So the tongue position must be there. What we have to practice is find a way to tongue cleanly in there that we're going to articulate the notes cleanly, almost like you're trying to achieve like a piccolo trumpet type of cleanliness if you're a good pick player or a D or E flat player. So before I put the metronome on, I'm going to do the exact same thing. We're going to try and tongue cleanly up to the A flat. Kind of there. I would say it was more there than not, than the faster. So that there. Ba, ba, ba. Let's find out what tempo that is. Ba, 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 ba. So that's about 90, okay. So taking that as my lowest possible or my fastest possible tempo for a clean start in terms of trying to get the notes to articulate freely is where we will build. Now I'm not going to go into that in this, that's a lesson for another time. But in terms of extending this exercise, or rather, getting the most out of the exercise the way it's written, finding your maximum tempo where you can play cleanly and articulate in the upper areas of your range, that's all within this lesson already. The tempo mark has been suggested. I recommend that you stay within the one tempo for the whole exercise. And when you get to the upper parts of your register where the notes aren't speaking cleanly, that's when you can either adjust your tempo down probably or remove the metronome entirely so that you're actually practicing the articulation of the notes in that area. Now, I mentioned very, very earlier on about the K position. When you say K, okay, literally the word K, okay, you're very, very close to the ch, okay? So that's kind of what I was referencing in terms of a K tongue for a higher access to the register. I am not going to go down that route. I don't know enough about it in terms of like the TCE technique, any of the Cali stuff, etc., the super chops thing. That's something that I'm not clued up upon at all, other than just touching on it briefly there. And tongue shape facilitating airspeed is obviously a big subject that is briefly touched on in the Maggio exercises here, not enough, but is covered more globally in other groups. So I hope I didn't waffle too much on this one. I tried to play from beginning to end. I've got a huge big video now just to chop down and cut up. It's going to be hopefully online before the 1st of August. I've got another one to put up as well. I'm going to do right now. I'd hope to finish all 3 prior to the end of July, because I think it was August last year that I started these ones. Might happen, might not. Busy weekend this weekend. Sorry for the delay in all of these, and please like and share these videos. When I do the last video, I'm going to be doing a synopsis. I'm going to do a review of the Maggio technique. I'm going to try and include my thoughts in there as well. So please stay tuned to the channel for all the videos that are coming up. There's going to be a whole bunch of other stuff regarding playing, regarding just everything trumpet. Okay, so if you've got any comments, keep them clean as always. Please, thank you. Try and keep them constructive, be them positive or negative. And that can go for video technique and anything else as well. Any stuff that you want to see on the channel, trumpet music related, that'd be grand as well. And other than that, folks, stay safe and stay smart. We're hopefully almost out of this mess where we are just now in respects to coronavirus and the pandemic and all of our lockdowns, etc. And hopefully the arts, certainly in the UK, are going to be opening up soon. I know I'm doing a few more things weekly stroke on a monthly basis. And other than that, take care. Bye.